So good to see you guys. Man, I just right up front, I just want to be apologetic. If I cough or my throat goes in and out, I'm still getting over being sick. And so I just came back from the Pacific Northwest. I went on a 4-day trip and camped and hiked Mount Rainier and Olympic National Park. If you're a national park person, that is where I was this past weekend. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my entire life. So I hope stop by, find me. I'll show you some pictures. They're pretty cool. So these past 2 weeks, we've been kind of walking through this series called Nameless. Nameless has this weird energy when you think of, wait, I'm losing my name, or I don't have a name. And a lot of us, even if you were to really look down at the heart and soul of who you are, you question maybe, am I known? Am I worth anybody's space and time? You know, a lot of people have asked that question. I've asked my question myself. And men and women in the Bible also went through this as well. And we walked through 2 specific stories about men and women who looked within themselves and said, I don't know if the worth of me being known is that important anymore. Because that's really what happens is you and I, we search for what matters the most. Everyone in this room is searching for what matters the most. Now, what matters the most to you might be different than to the person to your left, to your right. So for you and me, what matters the most? You know, and so this element and this bottom line that we've been trying to make it very clear for you these past 2 weeks and for tonight is I want you to walk away with this understanding. What matters the most is this: to be seen by Jesus and to show the world who Jesus is. This is what truly matters. A lot of us are looking in so many different places. So many different places. Some of you who are athletes, you guys are looking to have an accolade of, I'm a good athlete. Some of you who are students who want A's and B's, I want to be a good student. But sometimes we allow those images to go deep within our core being, and that takes over instead of actually connecting with God. We are identifying that if I'm a good athlete, therefore I'll make a lot of money. If I'm a good athlete, therefore I'll get all the girls or guys. If I'm a good student, I'll get to go to school for free. And if I go to school for free and I get a good education, then I'll get a good job. And if I get a good job, then I'm going to have a lot of money. If I get a lot of money, I can get anybody I want. I can have any house I want. Fill in the blank. And so all these things that we look towards, they don't really fill the void of being satisfied or being content. And these stories that Jesus connects with, I mean, these people who had no names that we don't even know their name, but we know their story. And in short, they wanted to be seen by Jesus. They wanted to be known by him. They wanted a connection. So there was no true desire for them to be known by the world anymore. The woman at the well, right? She had no care anymore about what other people think, because when she met Jesus, she went back to her town and told them about him. What about the 2 other guys in the other story? We looked at the leper and the Roman officer, both of them outcast in some way, whether they were so high up that people couldn't touch, or he was so low that people didn't want to touch. And so these individuals were considered outcasts, and yet they had faith that Jesus was greater than anything that they were looking for. More faith than healing, more faith than power. They believed Jesus was faith, power, healing. We're going to talk about one more story as we close our series tonight. And I'm excited to bring this story to you. And it really highlights this element. Real giving is reckless, holding nothing back. What if we were like that? I wonder if we gave recklessly. When you think of the word reckless, it's you do it you're radical. You're just doing it just to do it. You're crazy. People think you're nuts. When you hear reckless driver, you think they're not driving safe. Wonder if we gave recklessly. What would that look like in your life? What if we gave love, hope, kindness, patience? Fill in the blank for you. What if we gave that recklessly? So tonight, before we get to the ending, in which we'll ask the same question, I want to ask this question for you. And I want you to think about this question. Who would you be if everything you do or did was taken away from you? Who would you be if everything was taken away from you? That's a hard question, isn't it? Really hard. I mean, before I even pose that question to you, I'd ask myself that. I'd say, Coert, if you lost everything, like this man named Job, if I had everything in the world I want, I do. I have a family. I have a little girl. I have the job that I love. If I lost everything, money, job, would I still be me? Would I feel worth it? And I know a lot of you are still growing and you're just, dude, I'm just a student, man. I don't have no family. I don't have a husband or wife. I'm just figuring it out, right? That's where you guys are at. But you still have to ask that question to yourself. What would you do if you lost everything? Who would you be? And so, the reason why I asked this question is simple. And it really helps us go into the story that we're going to lead into. Because there's this woman who had nothing. She had nothing. And yet, she gave everything away. Last night, my wife and I, when I came home for the trip yesterday, we sat down, we put Q to bed, and last night we sat down and watched some TV. And we flipped through and we fell on ESPN, and they were doing a 30 for 30 video on Dennis Rodman. And if you don't know who Dennis Rodman is, he's a crazy NBA athlete. What's that? That's great. I know. We're not going to talk about that, but here we go. So Dennis Rodman, let's continue the conversation with Dennis Rodman. Anybody know who Dennis Rodman is? Yeah. A lot of you do, some of you don't. That's okay. So Dennis Rodman, a documentary on this man's life. He was looking for an identity in himself. He was looking to be wanted and longed to be liked. And so Dennis Rodman was good enough to play basketball that he didn't need anybody else. He just played basketball. He was really good. But that wasn't enough for him. He wasn't just a great basketball player, but he needed to do more. So he started to go out and party a lot. And he would pay a lot of money just to connect with people. He married, got divorced, all these different things. He didn't know how to connect to his own kids. And so the crazy part is this. Dennis Rodman was searching so hard for what everybody is looking for, and he was looking in the wrong places. And see, real giving is costly. Real giving is costly, and he's willing to give his own life for something that really doesn't matter. It wasn't working for him. You and I will do the same thing. You guys are giving something of yourself to someone or something, And you have to ask yourself, is it working for you? And so with Dennis Rodman's story, it wasn't working. He didn't find that hope, that treasure, and he gave everything away, and yet it brought him to a dead end. Everyone here is giving away something. And so this woman, when I think about it, this guy, it costed his sadness, Dennis Rodman. It costed his life. It was brokenness that he was experiencing. And instead of trying to be known by the world, I guess my question is, how can we give in a different way? Maybe like the Jesus kind of way that's worth your time, worth your energy, that actually matters. And so this woman, before we get to the story about this woman, I want to read this part here. It's in Mark 12. And God talks about love. And I want to read this to you. So follow above or behind me, and it says this. One of the teachers of the religious law was standing there listening to the debate. Jesus and a bunch of religious leaders were having a conversation. And this one teacher realized that Jesus had answered well. So he asked him a question. He said this, of all the commandments, which is the most important? And Jesus replied, the most important commandment is this. Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. The teacher of religious law replied, well, teacher, you have spoken the truth by saying there is only one God and no other. And I know it is important to love him with all of my heart and all understanding and all my strength, and to love my neighbor as myself. This is more important than to offer all the burnt offerings and sacrifices required of the law. So before we continue in that passage, because we're going to get to talk about this woman who had lost everything and gave up even more something. And so there's two things. Jesus said the greatest commandments are what? Love God with what? Heart. Cool. And love your? Yeah, so love God with everything that you have within you. And to love your neighbor as yourself. Guys, this is what the religious leader recognized. He said, oh my goodness, this is a big deal, that even if I come to give a good life, to be a good basketball player, to be a good student, to be all these things, and if I don't love God, and if I don't love people well, then I wasted my time. So literally, when he talked about burnt offerings, those are gifts, talents that each of you have. There's something that each of you carry. You are going to do great things in this world. Every one of you have the opportunity to change the world. The only one that really stops you from doing that is you. And why I say that is we hold back. We hold back, not giving recklessly. And the only way you can give recklessly is actually loving God with everything that you have and love your neighbor as yourself. The problem is when people love other people, they do love people how they love themselves. How you treat yourself is how you treat other people. If you think you're garbage, you'll treat other people like you're garbage. You might not act like you think you're garbage, but inside the heart of hearts, you're like, I'm trash. I need to be like this. And so you treat someone just like that. You treat people the way you think you are. So that's why Jesus said the greatest commandment is this: love God with everything you have. Love him. And when you do, you'll learn to understand that, man, I have to value myself because I'm worth something, because God sees worth in me. And if he sees worth in me, then I will treat others the same way. Love God with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus, when he said that, this is what launches this woman who had nothing. Love launched her to be the way she is. And so we continue on with the story. I love this part. It started with love in her heart. And it goes like this. Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as crowds dropped in their money. Just like when we have church on the weekends, we give offerings, meaning we give some money or gifts or whatever it may be because we're supporting the movement of what fellowship is doing. It's not just giving money to be like, well, I'm just going to give it as God tells us. No, God calls us to give back what he gave. Think about that. God calls us to give back what he gave. So every one of you have a gift and talent in your life right now. Are you doing it for him or are you doing it for you? Give back what he gave you. So this woman, he sees this. He sees many rich people put a large amount of money in there, and then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions. For they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, gave everything she had to live on. Do you guys know that 2 coins in those days is 1 penny? She gave 1 penny. So she gave everything that she had left. So the money that she had, she was willing to give up to say, I don't know what I'm going to eat for my next meal, but I'm going to give this away. I don't know what other needs or things that I must have underneath my possession, but it's not as worth as giving this away. Guys, there's gifts and talents that you and I have, and we either hold them for our own possession or we use them in the wrong way. And I'm wondering, and that's why I asked that question, who would you be if everything was taken away from you? Who would you be if everything was taken away from you? You lost everything. Would you be the same person you are? How would the inside look? And so this woman, she gave recklessly, having nothing, so much nothing that she was called a widow, which means she lost her husband. And in those days, as an individual who's a widow, who is old, they were considered fragile and not really a part of the culture, which means she was what? An outcast. And yet, on top of it all, she wasn't just an outcast, she was poor. She had no money. She had nothing to contribute to the culture. And the money that she had, she was willing to give it all. She gave everything. You know, we can only give what you have. We only can give what we have. And she did that. She gave everything. This had love that was so reckless that she gave it away. Money was not even worth it to her. She had those 2 coins, and she freely gave it away to advance something that was coming that was greater. The hope in Jesus, this idea of resurrection and life and love, that mattered to her more than having money to eat. That's sacrificial giving. Because giving costs something. Jesus did the same thing, guys. Jesus did the same thing. He gave of himself. And this is the same Jesus who tells everybody, this woman gave more than anybody else at that moment. Wow. Powerful words coming from a man who chose to die for you instead of just letting it go. There's a really cool quote by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, I don't know if many of you know him. He's an amazing author. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, wrote that. Stellar stuff. And he said this quote. Yeah, there you go. And he has this. He spoke some really, really wise words, and I want you to read this up on the screen. It says this: humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. So the reason why I bring up this quote and the reason why it matters in this talk is I want to talk about something that's really, really, really serious tonight. And if you don't know this, 2 nights ago, a pastor from California who was well known took his life 2 nights ago. Yes, a pastor who is well known took his life 2 days ago. So this man in his heart and his motion thought, right now it's not worth it. To breathe air, it's not worth it anymore. And there's many people around us who are contemplating the same exact thing. When I stepped into Colorado 6 years ago, 4 students took their lives in 3 months. The power of doubt, the power of not feeling worth, the power of feeling not valuable, the thought of my story doesn't matter, I'm not worth it, the power of depression, the power of the mental thought process of thinking that I'm garbage is there. And I want you to understand, we're giving of ourselves to energy and time that's not really effective when we're losing contact with God, which is the most effective way to stay connected and to stay hopeful. And why I bring up that is there's someone in this room, and I know there's more than one, who thinks the same exact way, who thinks my life's not worth it. I'm not valuable. And as I ask the band to come up, we're going to close with this understanding and this thought process. When you think that you're not valuable, you're not worth it, that you have no name to share, you start to think the same way towards God. You start to think the same way towards others. Maybe you come in this room tonight thinking, I'm nameless. No one knows me. No one cares about me. I don't even care about myself anymore. Maybe you're in this room and you're coming to try to make a name for yourself. The better my grades, the better I am an athlete, the better I look cool in front of my friends, the better the way I look, the whatever, fill in the blank, those things, you start to make a name for yourself so you look good. And so whether you think you have no name or you're trying to make a name, both ways aren't working. See, no one is nameless when they know Jesus. Let me say that one more time. No one is nameless when they know Jesus. Jesus knows who you are. He knows your name, and he loves you for who you are and where you're at. Whether you're living a good life right now, whether you're living a not so good life, whether you think the way you think or believe what you believe, Jesus died for you. He values you. So when you contemplate the worth and value, or you're overconfident in who you are, I want to tell you right now, your story matters. And every story on this planet matters. God didn't just die for some people, he died for the world. So if you had it all, or if you had nothing, who would you be? And I tell you, this woman had nothing, and she was willing to give even more away for the sake of being connected with Jesus. And there were those men, the leper, and the Roman officer, and the woman at the well were willing to trade their identity, their fame, I look good this way, or I'm not, whatever it is. They were willing to trade all of that for the sake of knowing Jesus. And when they did that, it affected not just their lives, but it changed the lives around them. Again, to be seen by Jesus and to show the world who Jesus is, this is what truly matters. See, guys, your value doesn't come from what you do. It comes from who you are. And if you are a follower of Jesus, your identity is not in your sports. Your identity is not in your schoolwork. Your identity is not even in the family that you live in. Your identity is in Jesus, the one who came for you. And to live by any other standard means you're holding back. God's given you gifts and talents to live life well, to love well, to give well, to be patient well. Fill in the blank for you. He's called us to do it well, to be a good athlete, to be a good student. But those aren't our identities. But we are called to give it back to him. You know, how cool would it be if we were more known for our characteristics than our actual name? And at first you're like, what? I love my name, Coert. I used to hate it. When I was in middle school, I hated it. I wish I was named differently. My dad's name is Coert. I'm the second. And I grew to love it. But what made it more powerful is that my name didn't have power until I knew Jesus. I gave my life when I was just shifting into middle school, into high school. So my story changed dynamically, realizing my name is good, and I love my name. But the name who saved me is so much better. He's made my name more relevant, more worth being around. What if we, instead of looking to be known for what we do and the title that we have, or the job that we have, or the car that we drive, or the sport that we play, what if we instead just were good and content with being known by Jesus and show who that Jesus is instead? I'm telling you guys, anything else, you're gonna spin your tires. It's like running on a treadmill. You work really hard to be somebody, and you're going nowhere. God's called us to relation with him. He wants a connection. And so these people brought glory to his name because they said, my name is not that important, but the name of Jesus and the people around who need hope, who need love, who need life, they are more worth it. Jesus and them are more worth than me. And so if you love God with everything you have within you, and you love your neighbor as yourself, so if you treat yourself well, you're gonna treat people well. And with that, you would be just like these individuals who are nameless, not looking for glory in their name, but they were looking to give glory to the highest and greatest name. And that name is Jesus. I'd love for us to pray, so let's go ahead and do that. Jesus, thank you for what you have done for us. You look at our lives and you see value, you see worth. You don't see garbage, you don't see trash. You made us. And you said, I love them. I love you. And so there's someone in this room tonight who doesn't think they're worth it. They think that life is not worth it. And there's someone in this room who thinks that they are life, that life revolves around them. And so I pray that you break down both walls to let them know that you, God, are worth everything and that you make us relevant, that you are life, that you are love. So if there's someone in this room who doesn't know Jesus, God, I pray that they will look and seek you out. Please, God. Because Jesus, the only thing that matters is to be seen by you and then to show the world who you are.